Welcome to the CondoVulturesTV podcast with your host, Peter Zalewski, a Miami real estate broker, Wall Street consultant, and expert witness. This podcast is focused on identifying real estate buying opportunities in the South Florida condo market of Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. The CondoVulturesTV podcast is not authorized by the South Florida real estate industry and will most likely annoy many of the region's talking heads. This podcast will feature straight talk and salty language that could be offensive to some. Please remember that past investment success does not determine future gains, especially in South Florida's volatile condo market. For more information, please visit CondoVultures.com. Don't buy a South Florida condo, discounted or distressed, before taking a Condo Vultures correction tour. CondoVultures.com offers weekly bus and walking tours that focus on educating buyers on the how-tos of identifying discounted condos, analyzing the opportunities, and purchasing units. Every tour attendee receives a list of all condo projects in a particular market, a market assessment handout, and unmatched expert analysis. For more information on the condo correction tours, please visit CondoVultures.eventbrite.com.
This is Peter Zalewski of the Condo Vultures podcast. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. And I wanted to alert you that if you have a property that you're looking to sell in the Tri-County, South Florida area, I would encourage you to reach out to Jenny Cortez, a licensed real estate broker with CVRRealty.com. She's my partner. She's been in the business for north of 15 years. More importantly, she knows the market. She knows how to get a deal done. And she also realizes that it's more important to get a price that you can accept and sell the property rather than to hold firm on some price that's never going to be achieved and ultimately languish on the market. So if you're looking to do a deal that you want a skilled expert who can help you sell a property, reach out to Jenny Cortez at 305-865-5859, 305-865-5859, or visit her website, CVRRealty.com.
Welcome to Miami Reporters Roundtable podcast. I'm your host, Peter Zalewski from Condo Vultures. If you're tuning into this podcast, you're going to hear a conversation by current and former journalists talking about some of the biggest stories that occurred within the last week. We're going to cut through some of the fluff, and we're going to give you straight talk as to what's going on in the South Florida real estate market, the economy, and even some politics this particular week. So the way the podcast works is I handpick 6 stories. I send them off to the journalists, ask them to go ahead and give them a read, give them a review. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask them to cut through and give you, the audience, some straight talk. Who is our target market? We are a podcast for developers, for lenders, for buyers, for sellers, for investors, and even gadflies. So that is the overview. Let me go ahead and introduce you to our panelists. We have a gentleman who was a journalist for over 25 years. He was a business writer. He was an editor. And right now he has a public relations and marketing firm called Gruss Communications. It's no one else but John Gruss. If you want to check out his website, go to GrussPR.com, GRUSSPR.com. What's going on, John? How are you?
Hey, Peter, ready to cut through the fluff.
Cut through the fluff. And John, what I should say, if anybody wants to reach out to you, they can get you on X, which is formerly Twitter. They can get you at John Gruss, JeanGruss. So we love having you aboard, John. Thanks in advance for cutting through the fluff. Who else do we have on the podcast this week? We have a gentleman who's a journalist for over 20 years. He wrote white collar crime stories. He wrote about business. He also did restaurant reviews. Right now, he is a consultant. It's no one else but John Fackler. You want to get a hold of John, you can get him on X, which is formerly Twitter. Get him at JT Fackler, Fakler. What's going on, Mr. Fackler?
Hey, Peter, glad to be back on the Unauthorized podcast.
It is great to have you, Mr. Fackler. We're looking forward to a good podcast. This should be a good one. And who is the final member of the podcast this week? We have a gentleman who was a journalist for nearly 5 years. Then he went into the political world. At the end of the day, he's a public relations person that specializes in politics. No one else but Eliezer Melendez. What's going on, Eliezer?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Peter. And looking forward to a fun discussion. You guys are into
it's
it.
going to be fun. And keep in mind, Eliezer, we're looking for straight talk. So don't be afraid to let it fly. I don't think you'll offend anybody who listens to our podcast. You might listen to some people who don't listen.
I will. Don't worry about that.
Now, Eliezer, if somebody wants to reach out to you, turns out they actually can't. You only work with people who are referred to you. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll put the LinkedIn. I normally like to get referrals because a lot of what I do is kind of politically sensitive. So I really like knowing my clients before I take them in. But reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll give you the link.
I'll be sure to put a link into the description as to how people can find you. Eliezer, we've been doing this podcast for 4 years or so. A lot of the audience kind of recognizes some of the names. This is your maiden voyage. This is your your debut, if you will, on our podcast. So I'm just wondering, could you give people an overview kind of who you are and what you do and what your journalism career was like?
Absolutely. So I came here in 2013. Been here just 10 years. It's been a wild ride though. I came from New York, as it seems like half of the people Amy did that are here right now. I was a management consultant in New York. I was a Wall Street analyst, but what I really wanted to do was be a journalist. So back in 2009, I became a journalist. I worked for a few places, including the Wall Street Journal and the Huffington Post. And I came here actually originally because I wanted to be a foreign correspondent. And there were a few bureaus that were interviewing, and you had to do the interview here and kind of a training program. After being here for 2 or 3 months, I decided, hey, I'm already in Latin America. I don't really need to keep moving. So I just decided to stay. Got a great job at the Daily Business Review, met a bunch of people. From there, went into the wide world of politics. And it's been a wild ride since then. I'm working in Miami City Hall and then for the Democratic Party and then having my own firm. It feels like a lot more than 10 years.
Wow. I can't believe it's only been 10 years. I mean, you've been around and I've seen your name quite some time. You even ran for city commission in Miami.
I did. I'm a big student of history, and I think I give that off. I'd like to talk a lot about things that happened even before my time. And then I think people think, oh, he was talking about that thing that was 20 years ago, so he must have been there. I'm just a big history nerd, though. But yes, I ran for city commissioner in 2019 for the district that includes Alapata and the Miami River, the district that currently has a suspended commissioner because he is accused of several felonies. He beat me, unfortunately. But I was telling people that I was a better choice.
Wow, this is going to be interesting. And when I was handpicking those stories that we're going to discuss today, I made it a point to pick one that had to do with the election, which just occurred. We're recording this in November of 2023. In case anybody watches this or listens to this sometime in the future. So I picked this story just maybe so you could provide some insight. Let me ask you a question. You came from New York down to Miami. Compare and contrast the way business is done as well as politics are done.
Well, I'll start with the business part because I really thought that was a giant culture shock when I got here. I remember covering some businesses that would do product launches or new strategy reveals in New York. And it was always like, you go to some conference room in Midtown, they have bagels, they have a cake, maybe they have a happy hour afterwards where you can network with the executives. Top of the tops, they would take you to per se or some fancy restaurant and do it there. The first reveal of a product here, which was a building top of that I went, was actually in Sunny Isles. And I remember this. I had just started working for the Daily Business Review. It was a Grosskopf building, Chateau Group. Mm-hmm. And they did a whole line of Brazilian samba dancers. Everyone was wasted at 11 a.m. And and they had like drones and fireworks. And, that was my introduction to South Florida. We try to do things with a lot more fun here and a lot more glitz. But beyond that, I do think that a lot of it is there is a kind of a handshake agreement of, are you someone, when people want to do business with you, they ask, like, are you someone that I can chill with, that is fun? Are you competent, mostly sober, at least 2 out of 3? Then I'll do business with you, which is kind of a different standard that you'll see in other places. Look, it's definitely a people and extroverts town and a relationship town, and the standards are very different. I think that I have not been asked maybe 3 or 4 times tops since I moved to Miami, where I went to school. That was something that I would be asked 3 or 4 times a week when I went to different places as a New Yorker. Socially, it's kind of a very important thing. So just the attitudes are completely different. In a way, it's great because, and it might be because we have so much immigration and entrepreneurs coming in from other countries that everyone is kind of willing to give you a chance if you go out there and hustle and show something interesting and show that you can hang, basically. So I think it's influenced by that. And I personally have found it to be very open. I feel like something like 73% of the people in Miami are immigrants or from somewhere else in the United States. Like the percentage of native born Miamians who were born and raised here is is very small. So everyone has had that experience of like, I came here from somewhere else and I kind of needed someone to give me a hand or show me the ropes or open a door for me. So I feel like people are a little bit more willing to do that in Miami. At least that's been my experience.
So, well, welcome aboard, and this is going to be a fantastic pod. And we're going to get into the political side, so this should make it local politics, I should say. So it should make it real interesting. Couple housekeeping items before we get started. One, if anybody out there has comments for us, you want to criticize, you want to compliment, go ahead and get us on X, which is formerly Twitter. Get us at Miami RRP, which stands for Miami Reporters Roundtable Podcast. It is not AARP, even though one gentleman or so on our podcast looks a little long in the tooth. It's Miami RRP, not AARP. And I'm not going to name names because that's the type of podcast we're going to have today. The other thing I want to mention too is if you are a fan of Marvel, if you like superheroes and you go out there and you wear the t-shirts and you buy the coffee mugs and you got the flip-flops or the sliders, well, we're doing the same thing right now too. We look at our journalists as superheroes who are able to cut through all of the noise that's out there in the local real estate market. And what we will do now is we work with a drop shipping company where basically we will take the images of everybody who participates on our podcast. We'll put them on t-shirts. We'll put them on coffee mugs. So you, the audience, if you want to join our community, you want to support us. We're not making a lot of money off of it, but it's kind of like a community type, a building type of thing. And Eliezer, I will tell you, we even sell shower curtains. So if anyone wants to get a shower curtain of any of our superheroes, our journalists, where you're able to find it, go to our website, CondoVultures.com. Go to the merch category of merchandise, and there you can basically go through our catalog. So those are the tidbits. And then finally, we're not breaking up the podcast with advertisements. So this is the only ad you're going to get during the whole podcast. My firm is the sponsor of it. It's CondoVulturesRealty.com, CondoVulturesRealty.com. We are buy-side brokerage. We do consulting. We do data. We also do expert witness work. So anybody out there who's looking to sue somebody and your numbers add up, give us a call. Maybe we can help you out. So all that being said, let's go ahead and get into our podcast. For story number one, we're going to start off with John Bruce. John, this is a story that I'm going to read you the headline. I'm going to read you the first couple graphs, and I want you to comment. It's coming out of the Real Deal. So here we go. Headline: Lisette Calderon and Jenny Burnell talk rentals at the Real Deal Forum. And basically, the Real Deal is a publication that has a big operation down here in South Florida. They cover real estate kind of close, the close-knit market. And they just recently had a forum. So they brought in a bunch of people, put them on stage, and they got some comments. But this one sort of caught my attention. So again, a headline: Lisette Calderon and Jenny Burnell talk rentals at the Real Deal Forum. Here's the first couple graphs, John, that I want you to comment. South Florida multifamily developer Lisette Calderon's insurance costs have surged 30%, all while she's dealing with the higher interest rates on construction debt and skittish lenders. And this is a quote from Calderon when she was on stage. Quote is: "There's no question that it's definitely a different lending environment than it was in 2021 and 2022. And Lisette Calderon, by the way, she's a CEO of her name of her company is Neology Life Development Group. And the quote, she goes on to say, the capital stack would look different today than when it was back then. Your leverage would be different, and you would have to put more cash into a deal. Calderon and her co-panelist, Jenny Burnell, founder of Clearline Real Estate, each approach the issue differently. Neology creates wiggle room in its project's budget through tech-empowered efficiencies, and Clearline is building in non-waterfront neighborhoods that are less susceptible to skyrocketing insurance. She also has completed equity fundraising." John, this is the first time I've heard a developer actually come out and say, listen, insurance prices, besides interest rates and supply chain issues related to labor and materials, but insurance price killing these developers. And later on in the story, Lisette goes on to say that, it's really a balancing act. Well, what do you make of that, John? Is she being straightforward more so than other developers, or she maybe doesn't have the track record and the other developers do, and that's why they don't complain about insurance prices? What say you, John?
Well, no, I mean, all those costs are adding up, and certainly developers and construction companies are not immune to rising insurance costs. But I think now lenders are very reluctant to lend on a lot of commercial real estate projects now. Rising interest rates, the regulators are all over the banks, especially the regional banks, because the regional banks are the ones that specialize in commercial real estate construction and development. And they're under pressure from the regulators to cut back on that kind of lending. And you combine that with the tsunami of apartment construction here in South Florida and really nationwide. And everybody's worried about a glut of apartments and what that's going to do to some of these markets. And a lot of those commercial real estate loans, I mean, I've been reading a lot of stories about how a lot of these commercial real estate loans are might be going, into foreclosure. So it's going to be tough because a lot of these developers, especially the ones that have started building recently, are going to have to refinance at significantly higher rates. So it's not only insurance costs and labor costs, but now you're going to have these huge interest costs, and that might blow up some of these projects. And of course, the banks don't want to foreclose at all on these buildings, or mark their books down to what the true value is going to be if we have a downturn and we have all these empty apartments. And I mean, the thing about Florida's boom and bust. I mean, we've had this like huge boom of apartment construction, and thousands and thousands of units are coming online. Everybody's wondering if those are going to be filled or not. So,
Now,
I think she's right on. I mean, she's being honest about what's going on, and what she said about the capital stack. She's referring to the way deals are financed. They're going to have to put more equity in, and you don't see a lot of developers that really have the equity now to put in. So it's going to be a lot more costly, and I don't think rent increases are going to happen at the same pace. So you're going to have some projects that are going to be really sort of doubtful, I think.
I want to read another graph from the story, and then I'll open up to the floor if anybody wants to discuss it further. The paragraph says, rents won't drop to pre-pandemic levels and vacancies won't continue to decline. Calder said demand is now fueled by would-be homebuyers who continue to rent due to roughly 8% mortgage rates. What say the roundtable in terms of rental prices? Are they here to stay? They're staying firm, or we can start to see a retreat?
I think it depends on the location. First off, I mean, not where looks like Calderon is building. She's building at La Pata on the Miami River, in the areas that are not Brickell, downtown, Edgewater, Coconut Grove, not the hottest parts, but the right next to it, right? So where she is, yeah, rents are going up because everyone's like, this is going to be the next gentrified neighborhood, and they're part of that effort to do it. I'm not sure that rents are seeing that same growth, or that they won't go down in places like West Kendall or Doral or Homestead. For a long time, the American affordability strategy has been drive till you can afford it, right? And
right.
That's like what it's happened in the past. Now, obviously, there's a lot of preference, especially for people moving into Miami and for younger people to live near the urban core. But there's also a lot of people that the same way that they're deciding to, I don't know, if their job is remote and they can move to somewhere a little cheaper in Fort Myers or in Broward County, they could do the same thing by going to other places in Miami-Dade. So I'm not sure. I think that applies to where she's building and the urban core, but I don't know about other places. So I think it'll be different what happens in the urban core with rent as the person.
Interesting. Okay. Story number 2. John Fackler, we're going to go to you with story number 2. This piece that's coming out of WSVN. It's Channel 7. It's the Fox affiliate down here in South Florida. I'll read you the headline and then the first couple graphs, Mr. Fackler, then I want you to comment. Headline, Paradise Lost. South Florida seniors struggling to keep roof over their heads due to rising housing costs. And then the first couple graphs, Mr. Fackler, Florida's housing crisis is putting the state's most vulnerable population at risk. While seniors should be enjoying their retirement, some are fighting homelessness and struggling to keep a roof over their heads. The golden years, that is what 82-year-old Gustavo Madrano and his wife were looking forward to when they moved to Century Village in Pembroke Pines 2 years ago. Gustavo Madrano, he says, I came here to relax. These are the last days of my life. I don't know how much long I'm going to be here. But the golden years is not how he would describe his life right now. He's afraid his money will run out because of the increases in monthly condo fees. Mr. Fackler, we've been talking about condo associations quite a bit. We've been talking about insurance prices and how they've spiked as a result of a combination of hurricanes, as well as the collapse of the Champlain Tower South in a place called Surfside, which is located on the Barrier Island in Miami-Dade County, and what it's done to insurance prices, as well as just insurance companies trying to make a profit. What do you say, Mr. Fackler? Is Miami-Dade County, is South Florida, it's still a place for retirees and seniors?
Yeah, this is a real problem for seniors. There was some really shocking statistics in this story. One of them was that approximately 20% of homeless people in Miami-Dade and 15% in Broward are seniors. And I was shocked by that number. I mean, I really couldn't believe it. And if you dig into the story, they talk about why. And a lot of people, let's say they're on a fixed income, $1,000 a month, which is a pretty low, but you certainly can't afford rent. What they're doing is in lieu of paying their rent, they're paying all their other bills, and they're sitting in front of some homeless place out in the cold and the bugs and the heat. And this is happening more and more. And when they go back and try to find out, why are you raising our rents? We can't afford this. And what's happening is the building owners are saying that it has to do with the insurance costs are going up. We can't handle them. And here's the thing: they're not lying. We've talked about this on other programs. The insurance costs are affecting everybody, especially those on the building side and the project management side. So they're just trying to, they're trying to make their maybe even break even. So essentially, this is why I was curious to bring Eleazar in on this. Done a lot of public affairs work. I'm just curious: is there any regulatory initiatives, whether by AARP or other senior groups, to get this to kibosh on this, to get this problem handled? And the problem is that seniors, it's a growing population. Population is growing very quickly. So this is a problem that's going to get worse before it gets better. And I'm just, don't know what they're going to do other than have some sort of regulatory initiatives on behalf of seniors.
Yeah, there's a lot of regulatory capture of the insurance industry of the state of Florida legislators, unfortunately. Not all of them, obviously, but in general, it's been not great. And the reality too is, the census is running for president, right? So there was a lot of performative legislation that was passed right before he went on the campaign trail that didn't really try to solve the problem as much as looked like it was solving the problem. And, we had a special session dealing with insurance issues, and they're as bad as ever, right? We've had like 2 or 3 of the biggest companies go broke since that special session, and we didn't even get a hurricane this year. If we got in a hurricane, I don't know where we would be, right? So we have a real big problem with the insurance in Florida, and we need a lot of different things to happen. There is probably a need for kind of an all of the above solution. There's been suggestions about you force the insurance companies to also sell sell car insurance to also sell home insurance. And that's worked in other states like Minnesota that did that. But obviously anything that you force the industry to do, you have to have buy-in from the elected officials to do it. And we don't have that.
Eleazar, I don't know if you have any opinion on this, but one of the issues we've kicked around this season of the podcast is Citizens Property Insurance, which is the insurer of last resort. It's basically a state of Florida insurance company to make sure people can continue to buy real estate. The real estate engine can continue to go. So one of the things we discussed is in places like Louisiana, the insurer of last resort actually charges a hell of a premium. Therefore, the private companies are able to come in and undercut the insurer of last resort and still make a profit. But here it seems like the insurer of last resort is actually cheaper than private industry. I don't know if you have any comments on that or any opinion on that, given the fact that insurance runs this world because we have no state income tax.
Right. There's cheaper and they have different underwriting standards, right? I have a lot of experience with some clients that are in the high-rise condo world, and some of them were just told by their insurance companies, even long relationships, we just want insurance, no matter the price. We just won't do it, especially with some of the new regulations coming up, unless you find some creative accounting for certain things. But, in creative accounting, I don't mean in a negative way. Like, it has to do with the replacement value of a new condo building is astronomical, right? It's huge. So like, if you are a new luxury high-rise condo building that is worth literally billions of dollars in the city of Miami, how do you insure that, right? Without really getting into a new way of measuring what the actual value of that condo is. So there's things you can do, but I don't really think that politically it would be acceptable to take away that option, because then people won't have the option, right? And then you can't get insurance, you can't get a mortgage, then it would affect the market, like you were saying.
Interesting. So We're going to go on to Eliezer Melendez for story number 3. Eliezer, this is a piece that is coming out of CBS News down here in Miami. It's WFOR. And let me read the headline and read the first couple graphs. Then I'm going to want you to comment. Here we go. Headline: Diaz de la Portilla and Gabella headed the runoff for Miami Commission. We just had the election, city commission election going on down here in Miami last week. We're recording this the second week in November. There was an election last week, and the election was going on because the city commissioner was actually suspended by the governor of the state of Florida, Ron DeSantis, because he was arrested with a number of different charges having to do with, let's say, financial shenanigans. I don't want to get into too many details. I'm not an expert in that, but that's the
I believe
background.
the actual charge was money laundering.
So money laundering. There we go. Money laundering. So here we go with the first couple graphs, Eliezer. Then I want you to comment. Again, headline: Diaz de la Portilla and Gabella headed the runoff for Miami's Commission District 1. First couple graphs. City of Miami voters went to the polls Tuesday in the city of Miami to decide suspended Commissioner Alex de la Portilla would keep his seat. De la Portilla was suspended after he was arrested on corruption charges, but is still running. 3 men and 1 woman were vying to take his spot. When it was all said and done, De La Portilla did not get enough votes to win his seat, but he'll be headed to a runoff with Miguel Angel Gabella. I'm wondering, Eliezer, how does somebody who gets arrested, now granted, everybody is innocent until proven guilty, they get arrested, they are suspended by the governor who comes from the same party as the commissioner who gets arrested, is suspended, is removed, an election is held, and yet this person it basically is in the final 2 runoff, which will be decided a couple of weeks from now. How does that happen in a place like Miami? And more importantly, what message does it say to the business community?
So very simple. The turnout rate for this election was under 12%. It was 11.9%. That means over 88% of the people that are registered to vote, eligible to vote, many of them even got a absentee ballot in their mail, just chose not to vote. Why? When you ask people in the district who is there, are the candidates that will keep their promises, they say nobody. Who's there that's going to listen to your concerns? Nobody. Who's there that's going to help, the poor and the people that are struggling? Nobody. Who cares? Nobody. So they voted for nobody, right? That seems like a pretty good candidate if they meet all those things. So they voted for nobody, and then that means that you have people that are able to use a significant amount of money. Yes, Portilla had over $2 million between his campaign account and his political action committee. He got 1,437 votes. Do the math. That is over $1,500 a vote, right? He would have done better just going out there and telling everyone, here, I'll give you $1,000 and please vote for me. So those numbers are astonishing, but that is the reality of where we are. I know both those gentlemen in the runoff well. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I ran in this district. I actually came in 3rd in the same election in 2019. So I was Diaz de la Portilla first, like in this case, Gabella second, and I came in 3rd by about 120 votes. They got a lot less, the total number of people that participated were a lot less than 4 years ago. So the public is just disappointed in not participating. And, we'll see what happens. The reality is that one of them is going to get elected one of them is going to win this runoff with over 50%. Mathematically, it has to be that way because it's only 2 candidates. So if Diaz de la Portilla gets reelected, it'll be quite interesting to see if the governor suspends him again. He still has the felony charges that he's facing. He still has to go to criminal court for these charges. I would think that the government suspends him again, but he's definitely going to make an argument if he gets reelected. Look, the people voted for me in spite of having the charges. It's undemocratic for you to suspend me, and maybe he won't get suspended. If Gabella wins, then obviously Gabella will be the commissioner. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. Definitely not a good look. It's not making Miami proud to have this situation.
And this is a question for the whole roundtable. There's been a lot of talk about people moving to South Florida during the pandemic, from California, from New York, from all around. How should they view all of these issues related to commissioners? Keep in mind, one commissioner was sued and basically for using planning and zoning, using investigators, using the police to go ahead and effectively interrupt, let's call it, businesses from operating because they didn't support that commissioner publicly. Then we had this situation where the mayor of Miami is reportedly under investigation for trying to push through a proposed project. And lo and behold, it was announced that the developer who wanted this project sort of pushed through was paying about $10,000 a month, allegedly, to the mayor. And now we have Alex de la Portilla, who's in the runoff. He was actually arrested. He runs for a runoff. So what's the message that's being sent to the Californians and New Yorkers who've all moved down here? And how comfortable should they be setting up shop in South Florida, especially in Miami, if this is the type of climate you got to operate in?
Yeah, I mean, why would you invest in Miami when all this is going on? And I mean, the thing is you talk to any business owner around the state outside of Miami, and you ask them, like, do you have any business opportunities in Miami? Do you see Miami as good territory to expand? And without a doubt, I would say most of them would say they would never come to Miami and do business. On the other hand, we've had an influx of a lot of national financial services companies, hedge funds, and technology companies, and some very high caliber new tenants and newcomers to Miami. And I think that they're going to demand that the city cleans up its act.
Yes.
And I think actually that's the silver lining. While they may sort of be tiptoeing into Miami, they're going to demand that these kinds of shenanigans at least someone makes an effort to try to stamp some of these out before they make more significant investments. But
Right.
I think those kinds of companies will want an atmosphere that is, a whole lot less obviously corrupt than what we have now. So I think things will improve, especially with a lot of out of towners coming in and demanding that they do.
Yeah, Sean makes he makes a great point. I mean, the New Yorkers and Californians who've come down here, they're out of the league. You would think that they're wised up and they're intelligent to understand this corruption, in their own backyards. But it's nothing like Miami. I mean, or even Broward. I mean, we used to call, when I used to cover investigations in Broward, we used to call it Fraud Lauderdale because it was so well known, at least within South Florida, as a corrupt place. Miami-Dade, of course, even worse. Palm Beach, you had a lot of mob companies set up there in Boca Raton, with some of the boiler rooms up there. So it's really been a great place to cover crime, as a reporter. But I think Jean's right. I think they're going to really force them to clean up, especially if the companies that have moved here and are threatening to move out, it's good leverage for them. They could just say, listen, we need to clean this up or we're out of here.
Commissioner Zalewski raised $2 million from business interest, essentially, during the campaign. Now he's going to, on a runoff, he's going to start raising money again, right? When he was arrested, his fundraising dropped off precipitously. He went from raising almost $75,000 a week to, in the last week and a half, before he was able to raise more money, he was able to raise only $12,000. But now he's got the second round. He got 39% of the vote in the first round, so he can definitely make some argument to some people, hey, I'm going to win. You better support me. So I think the proof will be in the pudding in a week or so when we see if the people that stopped giving him after he got arrested give him money again in the second round. See how serious these business entrepreneurs are about, not giving to corrupt folks.
That's a great point. Great point. Okay, story number 4. Sean Gris, we're going to go to you with story number 4. This is coming out of CNBC. I'll read you the headline, the first couple graphs, and I want you to comment. Here we go. Headline: How the cost of home buying and selling will change after landmark court loss over real estate commissions. And CNBC does key points. So let me give you the 3 key points that they've laid out. Point number 1, the recent $1.8 billion jury verdict against the National Association of Realtors and several top brokerage firms highlights mounting legal and market pressures on real estate commissions. Point number 2, a recent Keith Burriett and Woods analyst report estimated that $100 billion paid in real estate commissions annually could be cut by 30%, with as many as 1.6 million agents losing their source of income. And point number 3, commissions are already negotiable, but buyers' agents are likely losers, as home buyers are more likely to bypass them or at least negotiate for lower fees. Now, John, before you comment, just for the record, the brokerage firm that I have, CondoVulturesRealty.com, we are buy-side brokers. And typically when we work with any buyer who might want to work with us, we get them to sign a commission agreement, which is a fiduciary agreement where we are responsible for them. So we are buy-side brokers. We potentially are at risk. And I just want to put that on the record. So please go on, John. Why don't you give us some opinion?
Well, I mean, look, there's like a tremendous amount of confusion out there right now over what exactly all of this means. And
Yes.
not only that, but there's now a complete free-for-all on the legal front, with all kinds of lawsuits being filed against. I mean, the lawyers are having a field day with this thing because we're talking about huge amounts of money. Not only this judgment, which actually the damages could be tripled by the judge.
Yes.
So I mean, it's just I basically put the National Association of Realtors out of business. And so, but really, the crux of the matter is why do you hire a realtor? You hire a realtor for access to the multiple listing service, which is sort of the private database where homes are listed for sale. And, when I think of hiring a realtor, that's the reason I hire a realtor, is for access to that database, which I don't have as a private individual. So what is that going to look like after all of this is said and done? And will there be a multiple listing service, basically a closed database that's only available to realtors? And obviously the commission structure is a part of that whole system. So it's going to be really interesting to see what comes out of this sort of mess that the realtors are in now. And, as to whether this is actually in the end going to be good for consumers or not, I have no idea. I mean, all these numbers are flying around, billions of dollars in lost commissions. I think that, we don't know yet. We don't even know, what it's going to look like after all this is said and done. So I think it's a little premature to say that, realtors are basically going to be out in the streets. So I think we have to sort of wait and see, and see what happens to the National Association of Realtors, all the realtor associations here, and how their sort of locked system of data, the multiple listing service, what that's going to look like, and how people are going to get compensated. Because, if I'm a seller, I'm happy to pay a commission for you to bring me a buyer. I mean, that's what I want. That's why I'm selling my home through a realtor on the MLS. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And certainly, certainly the business of Florida is real estate. So, I mean, it's, everybody's a realtor here, or everybody knows a realtor here. And this is the business of Florida. I mean, even tourism is a funnel for real estate. So, I mean, this is what it's all about. So, I mean, for Florida, it's a critical question, and, everybody's going to keep a very close eye on it.
Now, I want to open up the floor, but let me just throw on a point for everybody to keep in mind. So in Florida, once you get a real estate license, and it takes about 63 hours, you sit in that class, you pass a class exam, then you pass the state exam. So 63 hours, you get a real estate license. Now, because you have a real estate license, you can represent somebody. And I have a broker. I have broker status. I don't really do deals. I do them if it's a big deal. Otherwise, I'm not going to mess around. But basically, 63 hours, you pass a class exam, then you pass the state exam, then you're in. Then you got to do continuing education every 2 years thereafter. But the basic point is, if I want to join the Realtor Association, just like if I am a sailor and I want to be able to dock my boat within the club, I'd have to join the sailing club. I'm a golfer and I want to play a golf course, I'd have to join the country club in order to play that course. So somebody who has a real estate license, their next gig is to go ahead and join the club, which is called the Realtor Association. And to give you context, in the Miami Realtor Association is about 60,000 members, according to their club, or according to their website. Now, dues are about $1,000 a year. So if you do some rough math, we're talking about $60 million that's being generated annually. And what is the primary driver for this? You get to use the database, and the database is where you are able to list a property for sale. Now you say, okay, that's fine. But if I hire a realtor to list my property, you see the sign for sale. Well, effectively what the realtors say is if you're going to go ahead and join the club, then you are going to list a property in this MLS. You have to offer it to other members of the club to be able to come in there and make a commission. And that's really what the lawsuit is about. And I'm not an attorney, Chuck, you're an attorney, but basically if you want to put it in the MLS, you have to offer a commission to other members of the club. Now, what a lot of people don't realize, and this is according to a professor over at FAU, Florida Atlantic University up in Boca Raton, roughly 80 to 85% of Zillow, I remember a lot of people use Zillow, 80 to 85% of Zillow's listings, their information, everybody plays this Zestimate, the Zillow Zestimate. Well, most of it is MLS listings. Most of it is MLS listings. So you can see how closely it's tied in. And also, too, before I open to the floor, let me just remind you, earlier this season, we did a podcast talk about how one of the multiple listing services, which is a database for realtors, it actually got hacked and it got shut down, and it shut down one of the markets. I think it was Cincinnati or something, where nothing could be done because everything was being driven forward through that. So, MLS listing is what you would call a regular listing. People who are going for sale by owner, they're doing we buy ugly houses. They're doing what's called off-market type of product because they're not being listed in the MLS, and no commissions are being offered openly to the buy side of the transaction. So I just wanted to clarify that. I don't know if anybody has any comments.
Well, the other interesting thing is what is that going to do to the business model of the traditional real estate brokerage? I mean, is it even going to be around? And of course, again, this huge business in Florida. I mean, just enormous business. So the implications of that are quite significant.
Let's go on with story number 5. Eliezer Melendez. We're going to go to you with story number 5. I'm going to read you the headline. I'm going to read you the first couple graphs, and I want you to comment. This is coming out of the Key Biscayne Independent. And here we go with the headline. Bad condo boards, beware. Representative Lopez has your number. And before I read the first couple graphs, Eliezer, let me just sort of update the audience. What we're seeing right now is because insurance prices have spiked because of the necessity to make sure that buildings are safe after the collapse, the disaster of the Champlain Towers South and Surfside on the Barrier Island in Miami-Dade County, we've seen insurance companies and we've seen the legislature take steps to try to make sure that people living in these older condominium buildings, as well as new ones, that the buildings aren't going to collapse on them. We're not going to see another 100 people die, another $1 billion settlement paid out to all the families as a result of that. So because of the rising cost of insurance and the necessity to create reserves and actually do the work that's mandated rather than simply defer it to the future, now we're seeing tensions really rise in a lot of these associations. Because as John Gruss likes to say, a lot of these condo associations, they're basically underfunded. In order to go ahead and do everything that the state law now requires, and insurance companies now require, you got to dig in your pocket. And when you're digging in your pocket, you start to question who's actually running it, wherein before nobody really cared. So that's kind of the context, Eliezer. So again, headline, bad condo boards, beware. Representative Lopez has your number. And first couple graphs, and then I want you to comment, Eliezer. State Representative Vicky Lopez made it clear Wednesday, condominium boards who are corrupt, who are not financially transparent, who do not respond to their residents are very much in her crosshair this next legislative session. And here is a quote from her. She says, some condo boards have actually lost sight of the fact that they are not an entity upon themselves, separate and apart from the condo owners. Eliezer, I don't know if you live in a condo. I don't know if you don't live in a condo, but I do know that developers and condo associations are up against residents and buyers. Real estate drives the Florida economy. We don't have state income taxes. Real estate is our primary generator of revenue, fills the coffers of the cities, of the counties, of the school boards, of the state. What is the chance that we can actually see some transparency brought to the condo association framework if after nearly 100 people died and $1 billion had to be paid out because of the collapse of Champlain Tower? Is this legislator, is she going to be able to work it through the system? Or do you think there's going to be just way too much pushback from the developer types who don't want that information out there? Because if the information's out there, people are going to be able to assess, just they can't with a publicly traded company. What is a theoretically good investment and what's a bad investment based on the financials? So what say you, Eliezer?
I think she'll be able to do something. The reality is that when we started after Champlain Towers and the disaster there that killed so many people overnight, in their beds in South Florida here, we had a focus first on changing the rules about what condos can do in terms of reserves, as well as what they can do in terms of engineering reports and other things that have to do with construction. That was probably about 25 years overdue. And the reality is that was significant for a lot of these condos, especially the ones that are more humble, right? The ones that are more middle class, where you might have a situation where there's some kind of catastrophic fault that is going to require $100,000 special assessment from its unit that they can't do, right? So the first changes that they did were all about that. What they're finding now is that they can't really implement that, and the law is only going to be as good as those condo boards are honest. And you can write all the laws in the books, but if the condo boards are corrupt, then you're going to still have situations where condos are not implemented. The vast majority of condo board members are not corrupt. They have other faults, but they're generally not corrupt. But you do have situation where there are some condo boards that have been taken over by corrupt people. And generally, they'll start off as corrupt, but they do it for many years, and they're like, I'm putting all this work into the community. Maybe, we just did the remodeling of the common area. Maybe I should tell the contractor to remodel my bathroom too with the same tile that was left over from the project. Or, you know what? I have a cousin that just started from Cuba. We need some work. Why shouldn't I recommend him to the management company to pick him up for the landscaping and so on and so forth? And then you just have people straight up, putting their hand in the kitty, taking cash bribes. So that's more what we're going to see in this session. The focus is going to move away a little bit from the structural and the financial requirements to just honing down on people that are corrupt and are being protected by the system, right? Actually, this is a project that with one of my clients in Miami-Dade Bar Association, we've been working on developing a program that could provide some services in the community, law students, as well as pro bono attorneys to help with this. And we'll see if this is something that the legislature funds us and we can move forward, because there's definitely a need.
Great insight. Mr. Fackler, I want to ask you a question, but let me just clarify for the audience, just in case they don't know what an HOA is. It's a homeowners association. It's effectively, it applies towards people who own single-family houses and townhouses within a community, just like a condo association would apply for the most part in South Florida, the people living vertical in a building. So it's the same thing. HOAs, homeowners, condo association, one and the same. Mr. Fackler, we've been going to you week after week after week about condo associations. We talked about the former condo board president who tried to blow up the vehicle of one of the residents in his community. We talked about the former condo board president who got arrested in Greater Downtown Miami at the Balloon condominium for basically allegedly stealing money. There's a lot of stuff going on. We see the state legislator stepping up and addressing it. What do you put the chances at of something actually getting done in the next session, given the strength and the political activism financially?
Well, at least
developers?
there's some sort of initiative. Let's be honest, this has been going on for decades. I mean, we've had, corrupt condos, corrupt HOAs. We've had financial threats. Now we're seeing, as we've reported, a lot of physical threats. People are being intimidated, particularly senior citizens. So, I'm glad to see that, that there's an initiative now to fight this to a certain degree. But like you say, a lot of this is embedded in the culture, in the real estate culture down here. I'm not sure about other states, but certainly in South Florida.
Why can't they apply the sunshine laws to HOA financial statements? I mean, I think that would go a long way to putting some sunshine on some of these shenanigans, because as it is right now, only the owners would have access to these financial documents. Even as a prospective buyer, I think you have like a few days to inspect the financial records. It's only after you sign a contract. I think it would go a long way to have these financial statements out in the open, because then everybody could examine them and decide for themselves whether the HOA is actually acting in the best interest of the residents and is managing the finances of the HOA correctly. As it is now, you have no idea. It's a black box. And I think if you had the same kind of credit rating service that would examine HOA finances, you could see like who the A buildings are and who the B buildings are and who the C's and D's are, of HOAs. And you could make a decision to buy or not buy based on whether that association is well managed or not. I think that would be a terrific thing for the legislature to address.
So funny story, John. Exactly what you're describing was a lobbying priority for the Florida Association of Realtors 3 years ago, 3 legislative sessions ago. What happened was, while they were also pushing that, they were also pushing a statewide amendment to the Constitution dealing with affordable housing that the majority hated. So because they were doing that and pushing that amendment on affordable housing, the majority basically told them, as long as you're pushing that, we're not moving any of your other priorities forward. So what you're talking about was actually something that was presented, but for political reasons, essentially for payback, it was never considered.
Wow. Fascinating. And I can tell you personally, going back to the Great Recession, when we were playing the distress market on the buy side perspective, I had access to a lot of lenders, and the lenders don't really care about the mortgages they're going to sell to Fannie Mae. Anybody who doesn't know how it works, basically, if you as a lender put money on the street, you finance the sale of a property, as long as it fits certain guidelines, you, the lender, you're able to take that mortgage and sell it. You sell it to Fannie Mae, you make your fee on the way in, prepayments, blah, 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 you make your money and you dump it. You don't really care. Now, what the lenders do care about is when they're portfolioing the loan. So if the loan is over what the Fannie Mae requirement is, and it's a cap, a certain amount, those are the ones that the banks are willing to pay generously for to be able to get that insight. So I have started creating a company to go ahead and rate these associations based on financial feasibility. And one of the issues we ran into in doing it is interfering with commerce, where the association could sue you, basically saying you are killing the price of our condo association because you came out with a number that ultimately could impact resale values, and then they'd have an ability to turn around and sue you. So I looked at it, I examined it, we collect some information, we use it internally, we don't release it publicly, but people are out there doing it, and really the fear is litigation. Because if you go forward and you release too much of it, it'd be very difficult. But I will tell you, Eliezer, if something gets through the legislature to go ahead and rate these associations, trust me, we'll be at the front of the list, be able to lock
the realtors want it. No, the realtors want it because, like you said, they don't get it when they're buying or selling all the times, and it becomes a problem. So yeah, they definitely have pushed for it in the past.
We shall see. We shall see. Okay. Story number 6. John Fackler, we're going to go to you with story number 6. This is pieces coming out of the ABC affiliate down here, WPLG. Website is local10.com. I'll read you the headline first couple graphs and I want you to comment. Headline: real estate transaction involving historic cemetery and Broward is full of injustice, residents say. And subhead: residents fear developer will build over the land that was once Westview Community Cemetery in Pompano Beach. And first couple graphs, Mr. Fackler. Esther Roll, an actress who is best known for her role as Florida Evans on Maude and its spin-off series Good Times, was buried at a historic cemetery in Broward County. Ed Phillips, a former Pompano Beach commissioner, said Roll, who was born in Pompano Beach, and many of the Black pioneers of the community were at the Westview Community Cemetery. This cemetery was created because African Americans could not go to other cemeteries, Phillips said. The grass is not kept. The cemetery, the casket at the top, seemed to be deteriorated and nothing's been replaced. It's tragic. Ella Glasgow said she also has many relatives buried at the cemetery, which was established in 1952 in Pompano Beach and is now in disrepair and was partially sold. Glasgow said she felt it's unjust to have to deal with the uncertainty of it all. Phillips said the cemetery is managed by a board. They had the nerve to sell some of the cemetery land without even asking or coming to this community, Phillips said, about the 4 acres that sold for $1.4 million to a developer who appears to be interested in commercial real estate. What say you, Mr. Fackler?
We talked about it earlier. I mean, South Florida, real estate's the business of South Florida. I mean, this is kind of shocking. I had no idea that you could annex part of a cemetery and sell it. The fact that it was mentioned in the story that the board manages the cemetery. It was board with a small b. It wasn't named. But the fact that they'd be able to sell it without telling the residents, some of these, when I say residents, I mean they have several burial plots because their entire families are buried there over generations. The fact that it's a historically black cemetery really puts a spotlight on this deal. And the fact is, she brought up in the story, like, why would a warehouse developer, she did a lot of digging to find out that it was a warehouse developer. Why would a warehouse developer want to even build next to a cemetery? But I always assumed that residential towers or construction were forbidden from building on cemeteries. So I guess I'm wrong. This is the first I'm hearing about it. And
Do you think we're going to get to the point where any piece of dirt in and around South Florida is basically going to be consumed? It's going to be built upon. What say the roundtable?
Yeah, I think, well, look, I mean, there's no new land. I mean, you got the Everglades on the west, and you've got the ocean all around, and Broward, I mean, completely built out. And so where are you going to go? So I think, that's kind of the trend that we're going to see, this redevelopment, tearing down of old buildings. And unfortunately, and any land that's vacant is fair game. I mean, even cemetery land, apparently.
I think at this same time, we're going to see a lot more political pressure for upzonings in neighborhoods that have resisted it historically. Places like Miami Shores, Cutler Bay, Palmetto Bay, South Miami. They're mostly single family homes, and they are in the urban core where it would make sense. I mean, they're right, like a lot of places just off of US 1, like on US 1, you have multifamily buildings, but like a block over, you don't, because you've basically had political constituencies that have defended that being single family homes for 30, 40 years. At some point, I do think that the developers just can't stop them. They're gonna force those single family neighborhoods to become multifamily, and that'll happen at the same time.
And so it would basically be a continuation of what we saw in greater downtown Miami with the Edgewater neighborhood, which was duplexes and single family houses that have now been replaced by 50-story towers. Very interesting point. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you for participating in this week's podcast. I want to thank Jean Gruss. He's a journalist for over 25 years. Right now, he has a public relations marketing firm called Gruss Communications. Check out his website, GrussPR.com, GRUSSPR.com, and follow him on X, which is formerly Twitter. You can follow him at Jean Gruss, JeanGruss. I want to thank John Fackley. He's a business writer for more than 20 years. He wrote about white collar crime. He also did restaurant reviews. Right now, he is a consultant. If you want to, I'd encourage you to follow him on X, which is formerly Twitter. Get him at JT Fackler, JTFAKLER. And I want to thank Eliezer Melendez for making his maiden voyage. You did a fantastic job. Anybody who wants to reach out to Eliezer, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put a link to his LinkedIn page where you can reach out to him that way. And I'm Peter Zalewski of Condo Vultures. Thanks for tuning in. Do you have any comments for us? Do you have any questions? Do you have any criticism? Get us on X, which is formerly Twitter, at Miami RRP, which stands for Miami Reporters Roundtable Podcast. If you want to check out any of our merchandise, you were looking for t-shirts, coffee mugs, you're looking for shower curtains, we have them all with our superheroes. Just like Marvel has its superheroes, we have journalists who cut through the fluff, and they are our superheroes. Go to CondoVultures.com, look for the merch tab. And let me remind you, and let me ask you, if you like what you're hearing, please go ahead and subscribe and make sure to like our podcast. So until next time, take care of yourself. We'll catch up soon. Ciao, ciao.
It's a simple formula, and it works. Buy low, sell high. We're Condo Vultures, and when it comes to your real estate, we help you buy low. At Condo Vultures, we represent the buyer, and now's the time to buy. Log on to CondoVultures.com for more information. CondoVultures.com. And remember, before you sell high, you have to buy low. Featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, 60 Minutes, and Time Magazine. Condo Vultures Realty, a licensed Florida real estate brokerage capitalizing on the condo correction since 2006.
This is Peter Zalewski of the Condo Vultures podcast. Before I started doing these podcasts, I was in the business of being a licensed real estate broker, a contributing columnist for the Miami Herald, as well as the Miami Real Deal, but also extra witness work in consulting. So if you are looking for an expert witness, or if you're looking for consulting services, a straight talk perspective as to what's going on in a particular marketplace, a building, or what happened previously, for whatever your situation is, whether you are an attorney, whether you are a institutional fund looking to invest, or whether you're a lender who's trying to come up with some sort of strategy and approach for your lending committee going forward, I just might be able to help you. To get a hold of me, please reach out to Peter at CondoVultures.com. That's Peter at CondoVultures.com, or give me a call to the office at 305-865-5859, 305-865-5859.